Breaking news shaking the nation. Former President Edgar Lungu's family has reportedly found a new home in South Africa. Is this just a private family decision, or does it carry deeper political meaning? Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see Zambia's current political climate. The death of Zambia's former President Edgar Lungu on June 5, 2025, in Pretoria, South Africa, sparked a significant political and social controversy that has reverberated across Zambia and beyond. The Lungu family's decision to bury the former president in South Africa, rather than repatriating his body to Zambia for a state funeral, has ignited debates about national identity, political rivalries, and the future of Zambian democracy. This document explores the Lungu family, their alleged property in South Africa, public reactions in Zambia, insights from political analysts, the Zambian government's response, the question of political exile, and the broader implications for Zambia's political landscape. It concludes with reflections and a question for readers to ponder. Who are the Lungu family? Background and composition. The Lungu family, centered around the late Edgar Lungu, Zambia's sixth president 2015 to 2021, is a prominent political and social entity in Zambia. Edgar Lungu, born on November 11, 1956, in Dola, Zambia, was a lawyer, military-trained officer, and politician who rose to prominence under the Patriotic Front (PF) party. His presidency followed the death of President Michael Sata, under whom Lungu served as Minister of Justice and Defense. Lungu's family, particularly his wife Esther Lungu and their children, have been significant figures in Zambia's political narrative, especially following his death. Esther Lungu, the former First Lady, Esther, has been a visible figure in Zambian politics, often accompanying her husband during his presidency. Since Lungu's departure from office in 2021, Esther has faced legal scrutiny, including arrests in 2023 alongside her daughter for allegedly acquiring properties through illicit means. These legal battles have shaped the family's public image and their ongoing disputes with the current government. Tassila Lungu, one of Edgar Lungu's daughters, Tassila, has been particularly prominent in the controversy surrounding her father's death. She announced his passing on social media and has been vocal in representing the family's stance on funeral arrangements. Tassila, like her mother, has faced investigations related to asset forfeiture, contributing to the perception of political targeting. Other family members. The Lungu family includes other children, such as Dalitso Lungu, who is implicated in legal cases involving significant assets, including over 80 vehicles and 16 properties valued at approximately $31 million. The family's spokesperson, Makibi Zulu, a lawyer, has been instrumental in communicating their position during the funeral dispute. Political influence. The Lungu family's influence stems from Edgar Lungu's tenure as president and his continued prominence in Zambian politics post-2021. Despite losing the 2021 election to Hakainde Hichilema by a significant margin, Lungu remained a powerful figure within the PF, attempting a political comeback in 2023. His family's involvement in politics, combined with their legal troubles, has kept them in the public eye, often polarizing opinions about their legacy. Social and cultural role. As a former first family, the Lungus hold a symbolic place in Zambian society. Edgar Lungu's leadership, marked by economic challenges and allegations of corruption, has left a complex legacy. The family's decision to prioritize Edgar's wishes for a private burial in South Africa has sparked debates about their commitment to Zambian national identity versus personal grievances with the government. Details of the South Africa property. The Nkonyeni property controversy. The Lungu family's alleged ownership of property in South Africa, particularly in Eswatini, has been a focal point of controversy. A 2019 memo from the Zambian Financial Intelligence Center (ZFIC), leaked as part of the Swazi Secrets investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists (ICIJ), linked Edgar Lungu to a plot of land in the Nkonyeni Golf Estate in Eswatini. This property was allegedly gifted by King Mswati III during a 2018 state visit, raising questions about undeclared assets and potential corruption. Details of the property. The Nkonyeni plot was one of 90 owned by Inyatsi Properties Limited, a company associated with Michelo Shikantu, who was linked to construction contracts in Zambia. The ZFIC memo suggested the land was part of a bribe for contracts, though Lungu denied ownership, stating he declined the gift after public outcry in Zambia. No evidence confirms the Lungu family currently holds property in South Africa itself, but the Eswatini case has fueled speculation about their financial dealings abroad. Legal implications. In 2023, Zambian authorities seized multiple properties linked to the Lungu family, including 15 two-story flats, a three-story lodge, a farm, and a house, under the 2010 forfeiture of proceeds of crimes law. These seizures, valued at over $2 million, were justified as targeting assets acquired through criminal means. The Lungu family and PF have labeled these actions a political witch hunt, alleging that President Hichilema's anti-corruption campaign disproportionately targets them. South African connection. While no specific South African property has been conclusively tied to the Lungu family in recent reports, reports, their prolonged stay in South Africa following Edgar Lungu's death has raised questions. Lungu was receiving treatment in Pretoria, and his family, including Esther and Tassila, organized a private memorial service at Sacred Heart Cathedral in Pretoria. The decision to bury Lungu in Johannesburg suggests a significant connection to South Africa, potentially due to medical, legal, or personal reasons. Public and media speculation. The lack of transparency about the Lungu family's assets in South Africa or Eswatini has fueled speculation. Some reports suggest the family's reluctance to return to Zambia stems from fears of arrest or further asset seizures, while others argue they are honoring Lungu's wish for a private burial away from Hichilema's influence. The absence of concrete evidence about a South African property underscores the need for further investigation to clarify the family's financial status. Reactions from the Zambian public. A nation divided. The Zambian public's response to the Lungu family's decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa has been deeply polarized, reflecting the broader political divide between supporters of the PF and the ruling United Party for National Development (UPND). Zambia, a predominantly Christian nation, takes mourning periods seriously, and the disruption of traditional funeral arrangements has caused widespread confusion and grief. Supporters of the Lungu family and PF. Many PF supporters view the family's decision as a legitimate response to perceived persecution by the Hichilema government. Social media posts and public statements highlight sentiments of betrayal, with some accusing Hichilema of disrespecting Lungu's legacy by pushing for a state funeral against the family's wishes. For example, comments on platforms like the Zambian Observer describe Hichilema's actions as hypocritical and politically motivated, suggesting the government is exploiting Lungu's death for critics and UPND supporters. Conversely, UPND supporters argue that Lungu, as a former president, belongs to the nation, and his burial in South Africa deprives Zambians of the opportunity to mourn collectively. They point to historical precedents, such as the burials of former presidents Levi Mwanawasa and Michael Sata in Zambia, as evidence that national interest should supersede family preferences. Some have called the Lungu family's actions selfish and divisive, accusing them of prioritizing personal grudges over national unity. General public sentiment. Beyond political affiliations, many Zambians express sadness and frustration over the lack of closure. The cancellation of the national mourning period on June 19, 2025, after 16 days, was seen by some as premature, while others supported Hichilema's call to resume normal life. Radio stations, which had been playing gospel music in line with Zambia's Christian traditions, resumed regular programming, signaling a shift away from collective mourning. Social media and public discourse. Social media platforms, particularly X, have been a battleground for public sentiment. Posts like the one from @Enoch on June 21, 2025, highlight the personal nature of the Lungu-Hichilema rivalry, noting that Esther and Tassila Lungu's legal troubles have exacerbated tensions. Other posts, such as those on the Zambian Observer, reflect conspiracy theories, with some alleging the Lungu family is using the former president's body to negotiate dropped criminal charges. These narratives underscore the deep mistrust between political factions and the public struggle to process the controversy. Comments from political analysts. Insights on the funeral dispute. Political analysts have provided nuanced perspectives on the Lungu funeral saga, emphasizing its implications for Zambian democracy and national identity. John Sangwa, constitutional lawyer. Sangwa, a prominent Zambian legal scholar, told the BBC that the tug-of-war over Lungu's funeral highlights the need for clear legislation on the burial of former presidents. He argues that while the family's wishes should be respected, the absence of legal guidelines creates confusion and politicizes mourning processes. Sangwa's call for reform suggests a long-term solution to prevent similar disputes. Kenneth Imodi, The Cable. In a detailed analysis, Imodi argues that denying Lungu a state burial in Zambia risks creating a narrative void in the nation's history. He compares the situation to historical cases, such as Malawi's Kamuzu Banda, whose burial in Malawi facilitated national reconciliation despite his controversial rule. Imodi warns that Lungu's burial in South Africa could set a precedent that undermines Zambia's ability to collectively process its past. Maurice Nyambi, Transparency International Zambia. Nyambi, speaking to the ICIJ, links the funeral dispute to broader issues of corruption and political interference. He suggests that the delayed investigation into the Nkonyeni property in Eswatini was due to political pressures during Lungu's presidency, reflecting systemic challenges in Zambia's anti-corruption efforts. Nyambi views the family's actions as a continuation of their resistance to accountability. Broader political context. Analysts also frame the dispute within the context of Zambia's polarized political landscape. The Lungu-Hichilema rivalry, marked by Hichilema's 2017 imprisonment and Lungu's 2023 allegations of house arrest, underscores a cycle of political vengeance. Commentators like those at the Zambian Observer argue that this feud reflects deeper issues of governance, human rights, and the rule of law. They suggest that both leaders' actions, Lungu's suppression of opposition and Hichilema's aggressive anti-corruption campaign, have eroded public trust in institutions. Future implications. Analysts agree that the resolution of this dispute will shape Zambia's political culture. A failure to repatriate Lungu's body could deepen divisions, while a compromise could signal a move toward reconciliation. The involvement of mediators like former Malawian President Bakili Muluzi indicates the gravity of the situation and the need for diplomatic solution. Government and State House response. Official position. The Zambian government, led by President Hakainde Hichilema, has maintained that Edgar Lungu, as a former president, deserves a state funeral in Zambia. Hichilema's administration initially declared a 7-day mourning period from June 8 to 14, 2025, extended to June 23, with flags at half-mast and radio stations playing solemn music. The government planned to receive Lungu's body in Lusaka with full military honors on June 18, but the family's refusal to repatriate the remains led to a breakdown in negotiations. Hichilema's statements. In a televised address on June 19, 2025, Hichilema emphasized national unity, stating that Lungu belongs to the nation of Zambia and should be buried with full honors in his homeland. He expressed frustration at the family's refusal to cooperate, announcing the cancellation of the mourning period to allow the country to resume normal life. Hichilema's call for peace, dignity, and togetherness was met with skepticism by PF supporters, who viewed it as insincere given the history of rivalry. State House actions. The government sent multiple delegations to South Africa, including Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi and Secretary to the Cabinet Patrick Kangwa, to negotiate with the Lungu family. On June 22, 2025, former Malawian President Bakili Muluzi, acting as a mediator, announced that another delegation was dispatched to persuade the family to reconsider their decision. State House also refuted claims of receiving burial notices from South Africa, highlighting a lack of formal communication. Denials and accusations. The government has consistently denied allegations of restricting Lungu's movements or medical access during his lifetime. Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa dismissed claims of a travel ban as fiction and argued that Hichilema's administration has shown restraint compared to Lungu's treatment of Hichilema in 2017. The government also rejected PF accusations that it was responsible for Lungu's death, emphasizing that he was receiving specialized treatment in South Africa. Legal context. The government's stance is complicated by ongoing legal actions against the Lungu family. The seizure of properties and pending court cases against Esther Tassila and Dalitso Lungu have fueled speculation that the family's refusal to return to Zambia is linked to fears of arrest. The Zambian Observer reported allegations that the family demanded dropped charges as a condition for repatriation, a claim the government dismissed as setting a bad precedent. Is this a sign of political exile? Defining political exile. Political exile typically involves a living individual fleeing persecution or seeking asylum in another country. In Edgar Lungu's case, the question of exile is posthumous and complex as it pertains to his family's decision to remain in South Africa and bury him there. The Zambian Observer raised the question of whether South Africa's allowance of the burial constitutes political asylum for a deceased person, a notion that lacks legal precedent but carries symbolic weight. Evidence for and against exile. Arguments for political exile. Family's legal troubles. The Lungu family's ongoing legal battles, including asset forfeiture cases, suggest they may fear returning to Zambia. Posts on X and reports from the Zambian Observer speculate that the family is using Lungu's body as leverage to negotiate dropped charges, indicating a desire to avoid Zambian jurisdiction. Historical context. Lungu's allegations of house arrest and police harassment in 2023, combined with the government's withdrawal of his retirement benefits, point to political victimization. The family's distrust of the Hichilema administration, evident in their refusal to allow his involvement in the funeral, aligns with the behavior of exiles seeking safety abroad. South African support. The South African government's facilitation of the private memorial service and reported condolences from Minister Ronald Lamola suggest a level of diplomatic accommodation, raising questions about South Africa's role in the dispute. Arguments against political exile. Lungu's death. Since Lungu is deceased, the concept of political exile does not directly apply. The family's decision may reflect personal wishes rather than a formal seeking of asylum. Edgar Lungu's will, which explicitly barred Hichilema from his funeral, indicates a personal rather than political motive. Diplomatic considerations. South Africa has not formally granted asylum or interfered in the dispute, as evidenced by the lack of official burial notices communicated to Zambia. The Zambian Observer notes that South Africa would risk diplomatic tensions by ignoring protocols, suggesting restraint on their part. Family's agency. The Lungu family spokesperson, Makibi Zulu, emphasized their desire for a dignified and peaceful burial in South Africa, aligning with Lungu's wishes. This suggests a choice driven by respect for the deceased rather than a forced exile. Broader implications. The perception of exile, whether accurate or not, has significant implications. If the Lungu family's actions are seen as a form of self-imposed exile, it could reinforce narratives of political persecution, galvanizing PF supporters and deepening divisions. Conversely, if viewed as a personal decision, it may be perceived as a rejection of Zambian national identity, alienating some citizens. The involvement of South Africa, a regional powerhouse, adds a layer of complexity, potentially straining Zambia-South Africa relations if diplomatic protocols are bypassed. What this means for Zambia's future. Political polarization. The Lungu funeral dispute underscores Zambia's deep political polarization. The rivalry between Lungu and Hichilema, rooted in historical grievances, has prevented a unified mourning process, denying Zambians closure. This polarization could intensify as the 2026 elections approach, with the PF leveraging Lungu's death to rally support and the UPND facing criticism for its handling of the situation. Precedent for future leaders. The decision to bury Lungu in South Africa sets a historic precedent, as it is the first time a former Zambian president will be interred abroad. As Kenneth Imodi notes, this could create a narrative void, complicating how future generations perceive Lungu's legacy. It may also influence how future leaders' funerals are handled, potentially leading to legislation as suggested by John Sangwa. National identity and reconciliation. Zambia's identity as a Christian nation that values collective mourning has been challenged by this dispute. The absence of a national burial site for Lungu denies citizens a place for reflection, potentially hindering reconciliation. Historical examples, such as Malawi's handling of Kamuzu Banda's burial, suggest that inclusive processes can aid national healing, a lesson Zambia may need to heed. Diplomatic relations. The involvement of South Africa raises questions about regional diplomacy. If South Africa allows the burial without formal notification to Zambia, it could strain relations, as suggested by the Zambian Observer. The mediation efforts of Bakili Muluzi indicate a desire to avoid such tensions, but the outcome remains uncertain. Governance and rule of law. The dispute highlights broader issues of governance and the rule of law. The Lungu family's legal troubles, combined with allegations of political vengeance, underscore the need for transparent and impartial institutions. Analysts like Maurice Nyambi argue that political interference in anti-corruption efforts must be addressed to restore public trust. Final thoughts. The saga surrounding Edgar Lungu's death and burial reflects the complexities of Zambian politics, where personal rivalries, legal battles, and national identity intersect. The Lungu family's decision to prioritize their patriarch's wishes over national tradition has sparked legitimate grief and controversy, revealing deep-seated divisions. While the government's push for a state funeral aligns with national protocol, its handling of the situation has been perceived as heavy-handed by some, exacerbating tensions. This moment presents an opportunity for Zambia to reflect on its democratic maturity. A resolution that respects both the family's wishes and the nation's need for closure could pave the way for reconciliation. However, the current impasse risks perpetuating a cycle of mistrust and division. The involvement of South Africa and mediators like Bakili Muluzi underscores the regional and international dimensions of the crisis, urging all parties to prioritize diplomacy and unity. Viewer question: how can Zambia balance the personal wishes of a former president's family with the national interest in honoring its leaders? And what lessons can other African nations draw from this controversy to prevent similar disputes? Conclusion: the Lungu family's decision to bury Edgar Lungu in South Africa is more than a funeral dispute. It is a microcosm of Zambia's political challenges. From allegations of corruption to questions of national identity, the saga encapsulates the tensions between individual rights and collective responsibility. As Zambia navigates this crisis, the resolution will shape its democratic trajectory, influence regional relations, and define how future leaders are remembered. By addressing the root causes of polarization and strengthening institutional frameworks, Zambia can emerge stronger, honoring its past while building a unified future.